Hello, everybody. Welcome to Stefan Berner's Information Modeling Talk. Stefan has over 30 years experience in computer science. He specializes in database modeling and programming. And over his career, he's had many different positions, including developer, database architect, case specialist, project and company manager, author, IT coach, and lecturer. He is the author of the book Information Modeling. Please, like other sessions, be interactive, ask questions. And with that, I'm very proud to introduce Stefan Berner. Welcome, Stefan.
Yeah, welcome, everybody. Thanks for your introduction. And welcome, or grüß dich miteinander, as we used to say in Bern, where I actually live, according to my name, the capital of Switzerland. And as Steve already mentioned, I have a lot of experience in database modeling, programming, and a lot of other jobs. And today I'm going to show you a bit some insight of the book I've written, Information Modeling, and what it's about. I work for a company called For You and Your Customers, which is over 200 employees in 14 cells in 6 different countries. And in this company, my job is to help companies, and this includes some rather big companies in Europe, to cover or to really implement a digitization strategy. And my special part is modeling, information modeling, what I do there. Well, before we go into the topic of modeling itself, we have to start with another point, with understanding and its shadow, misunderstanding. Well, because this is what it's all about in modeling, is how do we understand each other. This is not a new topic, and it's not related to IT, as you can see or read yourself in this statement from Confucius. Communication, or bad communication, has always been a problem and still is. We all know this or heard of this, that technical projects can fail because of bad or lack of communication. Also, this is not only related to IT projects. Maybe it's more important or more typical here, but also this is old knowledge. So, what are misunderstandings? Why do they happen? This is the first question. I give you a list of names. What do you read here? I'm pretty sure most of you think, okay, these are cities or capitals. Fine. If I add a name to this list, you have to revise your first impression or interpretation and say, okay, something geographical at least. But Greenwich is no capital. If I add another name, you're lost. You cannot know what the hell is he talking about. What has Isaac Newton to do with capitals or cities? I'm not sure whether Isaac Newton is the name of a city somewhere in the world, but okay. Had I given you the proper context from the beginning that I'm talking about meeting room names, all these up and downs in interpretation and knowledge wouldn't have happened. So what happened here? You got a list and you suddenly started to interpret, what does this mean? And you came up with the obvious answer, capitals. And when you learned more about it, you got lost because you didn't know what I'm talking about. This is a typical misunderstanding. The same thing happens if you are telling jokes or presenting magic tricks. You tell a story, you lead people toward some way to some goal, and suddenly you change context and people wonder or laugh. So misunderstandings are not errors per se, but if you act differently from the meant original interpretation, then problems can arise from misunderstanding. So, problem now, we know misunderstandings can happen. They do happen every day, in every situation. If they can happen and they do happen, how can we avoid them or at least reduce them? Now, this brings us back again a long time, 2,500 years, to Plato. We already heard yesterday about Socrates giving some clever words towards for IT usage. I will add Plato as well. Now, see, he gave us the definition of the 5 levels of understanding, how to grasp the idea of everything that exists. It was in his 7th letter he's written this. Now, first of all, first level, everything you're talking about needs a name. You need a naming. Let's take the example for circle. Just a little example from my private life. My granddaughter is about a year old and she starts to speak. Her name for everything she points to is ba. If she wants water, it's ba. If she wants to go somewhere, it's ba. So she hasn't yet a naming for the things she tries to explain. And communication sometimes becomes very difficult if you don't understand what she means with her naming. So naming is crucial in order to communicate about the thing. But that's not enough. You need a definition. You need to know what this name stands for. This example of a circle, it's simple. All points with the same distance from a common center in a plane. Well, next step is you need some representation, some examples, some drawing, some images in order to be able to place it in your brain. Our brain works with connecting pictures, images together. So you need some visualization, some representation to put it into your experience. Next level is you have to understand what this is about. The example on the right side, the circle drawn on the right side of the two, is not a perfect circle as in the definition, but you recognized it as a circle. Why? Because you have an understanding what a circle is. If I tell you, let's sit in a circle, it's never going to adhere to the definition we have, but you still will understand it. So you need some understanding in order to be able to apply it to your everyday life. And the last step is you grasp the idea, the thing itself, the purpose of the thing, the overall concept of the thing. This is insight, this is enlightenment, also called. So these are the 5 levels of understanding, what as defined by Plato. Now, what has this to do with our today's problem? First, the first 3 levels can be documented in databases, in books, in pictures, wherever and however. But they can be documented. So computers can manage the first 3 levels. But computer, at least today, cannot manage understanding. Understanding requires a conscious person, a conscious being able to interpret things in order to apply them to their life, to their everyday environment. I call this collective reality. It's the basic for communication between beings. We have to understand each other, meaning we need some common understanding about concepts, about things. The last step I call individual reality. That's my personal insight of what a circle is, how I experience the concept of a circle. I cannot share this with anybody because every person is different. So communication is on the knowledge, on the understanding level. Fine. So we need this common language, this common understanding is crucial to be able to communicate. Let's start with this individual reality. Every person has in his or her mind a concept, an idea of everything you encounter, you see, you experience. This, your personal knowledge, your personal seeing or recognition is based on language, culture, experience, education, relations, whatever. This makes you, your brain, your consciousness. This is you. If you come to a company or a group of people, whatever, just any group doing something together, let's take the example here of an office of a company. Every mini world, like a company, has its own reality. How they communicate in this world, their own language. Every company has its own language people use. If you come to a new company, what you have to do, you have to adapt your reality to the company's reality. You have to learn the common language. And you all know how hard this can be. This collective reality, where is it defined? Do I find a documentation about it? And how is it taught? How can I learn it? This is one of the problems you face as a newbie in every place you come to first time. So think for yourself in your company. You have a collective reality. You have namings, you have words, you have interpretations, and so on. Are they properly defined? And are they documented? So my solution, how do you document, how do you define this common language you absolutely need for communication within a group? My solution, applying Platon's idea, is the information model. Let's get a step further. I'll explain later what it is. So if you have a documentation and can read what people are talking about, if this is explained somewhere, it's much easier to get into a group, understand the group, than if you do it the hard way. In the first half year in a company, you have to learn the language. Okay, now how do we communicate and how do we document information? This is usually done by facts. I have here an example from a publisher's company, 3 facts. The book is entitled Dracula. The book was authored by Bram Stoker. The book was first published in 1897. These are 3 facts, undeniable facts in the environment of a publisher company. How do we document this today in our databases? You all know this. We have a table containing the values I just mentioned. This is data. The facts I just mentioned is your knowledge, is information. In a database, you have only attributes. There's a very important difference between data and knowledge, or data and information. Only the interpretation helps you, allows you to make sense out of data. So data itself is senseless and useless. You need an interpretation to make use of it in your environment. And this interpretation we have to add to our data. I give you an example why this is important. In your database, you find that Dracula, the book, and Max Altmann have something to do, but what do they have to do? What has Max Altmann to do with the book Dracula? You don't know. If you're not a specialist in publishing or this book, you don't know. Maybe you guess from the name and from German translation of the book that it could be the translator, but it's not. Only if I give you the context, you will see that this book was published by a publisher called Max Altmann. This is the name of a publishing company. Remember the example with the capitals? You could never have known this. because you hadn't the context. Okay, now you can interpret this. The book Dracula was published by publisher Max Altmann. Now you have a fact. So, what is this context? How do we describe it? I just gave you some prompts for your table or your screen, but we need more. And again, we need a model to do it. And again, I call this the information model. Just wait a second, I tell you, and come to it what it is. By the way, this way of facts and model, you will find also in other talks just following mine with Marco. Take facts from reality and out of them model some your knowledge. This is fact modeling. You can go in the other way as in both directions. Well, this model I just shown you has two usages. First, it tells you what you need to manage in your data. So it gives you an idea, not how, but what you have to store in your data and to manage. On the other hand, it gives you the key for the interpretation of the data stored in your database. So it is the bridge between senseless data somewhere and usage of data as information in the business. I'll come back to that. So now I have been talking too much about information model. I have to explain to you what I mean with information model. Some of you may have recognized this looks very much like an entity relationship diagram. And of course, you're right, but stay with me, there is more to it. I am using the technique of an entity relationship diagram plus a couple of rules. Why do I call it information model? You may know it under conceptual data model, but we heard from Steve yesterday, that's not a good name for this thing. He called it business term model or business term directory or database or whatever you call it, but don't call it data model. Actually, whenever you have the name data in your model, you will lose 90% of your audience, all the business people. They do not want to know about data. They want to know about information and their usage. So, what does it need to make an information model out of an entity relationship model? First and important thing, every term you read in this model can be taken literally as it stands here. And every term and the verbs are unconditionally accepted by every stakeholder in business and IT. And if you think about this, how many of your entity relationship or data models fulfill this condition, you will see, no, that doesn't really work most of the time. So I want a model which you can show to every person, regardless whether they have IT background or not. This is my aim. And we can do it. We can still use the methodology of entity relationships, but we fill it with semantics. This is the way. Second point, there's no, and I really mean no, IT technical or data-related term in the model. So you will not find a foreign key. You will not find some varchar 2500 data type or something like this. No, it's only names we can use in everyday language. This is the second thing. How it is related to data modeling, I come to it later. Just be patient a moment. And third thing, the meaning of every relationship is explained with a verb in both directions. We already heard that relationships is the key to connecting things. So our knowledge does not consist of terms publisher and book, it consists also of knowing how they are related and what we can do together with them. So a major part of our knowledge is our relationships. And most models you see out in the world do not write any verbs here. So you just say, there is some relationship between a book and the publisher, but you do not explicitly state it. You do not document it. And I think this is a crucial part of documentation of knowledge, terms with definitions, as we already heard, plus relationship between things, also documented. So now you see what I call an information model. It's an entity relationship diagram or model with entities, attributes, and relationships with some condition, no technical relation. What does this bring you? What does this help you? Oops, I'm sorry, wrong direction. Here, what is it? What is this used for? First thing, this information model I just described is the documentation of all relevant shared information know-how. It describes your collective reality of the whole enterprise. Nothing technical, just shared information, shared know-how. It is, as I said, technology and IT system agnostic. I want to describe the business know-how. I do not want to describe the databases, not yet, at least. And it extends across project and business areas. A book and a publisher and the relationship between them is not only used in one project or in one application in a publisher's company. Everybody working in this company has to understand the two concepts and their relationship. So it's not related to project and business areas only. It has to go further. You share knowledge in a company. You use the same words, and you have to mean the same thing. So it extends project and business areas as well. I will not go in detail how you do an entity relationship model. I expect that in a data modeling zone conference, most people know it. If not, there's a lot of literature out there of how you do this, how you model an entity relationship model. But I assume that most of you are already fluent in ERD modeling. So, a last point here. This model, if it really fulfills the three first points, it should be known and should be used by everybody in your enterprise, not only by IT. This is very important. It's about knowledge. It's not about IT only. Of course, IT also needs knowledge about the company. Well, we already had this as well in other talks. How big should this model be? How wide and how deep? On horizontal, you have a scope. Do I model only one project or one problem or one business area, or do I model the whole company and everything around it? This is one question. The other dimension is how deep in details should I go? Should I be happy with customer, product, invoice, and supplier and the relationship, so very high level concept or term definition, or should I go down to detailed attribute and data types and everything documentation? The answer here, it depends on your company, on your problem, on how mature your data governance already is. One thing, you should not start on the lower right corner. Modeling the whole world and hoping you get everything is the wrong approach. We did that 20, 30 years ago with enterprise-wide data models. I know about it. I did some myself, and I failed, as most people did, with enterprise-wide data models. That's not the way to start. Start somewhere in the upper left corner and grow in scope and grow in details as needed. This is the way to address this. The vision must remain an enterprise-wide model covering everything, but this has to evolve. Your methodology has to be scalable. Don't start with describing everything and then you're done. No, you develop it during your project over time, and you have to adapt it, of course. World changes, so your model must change. My definition of how deep and how wide it should be is every relevant entity attribute relationship which somebody in the business is communicating about should be defined in this model to prevent misunderstandings and misinterpretations. You cannot communicate properly if you didn't document your world. But this, what is relevant, what is deep enough, this you have to find out in your environment. This is not the same in every company. So make it scalable and scale it to your needs. Fine. So now I gave you a solution of how to model knowledge, how to model collective reality. And as I said, and I'm not going into details, how we do this. You have a lot of information out there, and you have a lot of courses where you can learn it. I'd like to show you how do you implement this in your enterprise? How do you make use of it once you have one? And this is out of experience. What did we do with our customers? Now, this old gap business to IT, I go back also a long time ago, not 2000 years, but about 40 years when I started IT. We had reality, some problems in real life, and we had some computers. And I was very proud. My first computer had 256 kilobytes of memory, and that was huge. And I started programming. What did I do? My method I applied, I today call FBTM, from brain to machine. So concept, drawing, pictures, anything I started coding assembler actually. And that was it. Nowadays, it grew a bit bigger, and also our methodology develops. We developed languages, systems, and business models. So the world changed. So sometimes I'd like to do FBTM again, but it doesn't work anymore. So how do we bring this together? First problem, there's a gap, or I call it a border, between business view of problems and technical view of problems. This is the famous business IT gap, communication gap. It was also mentioned in other talks and in comments and so on. This is, in my opinion, the biggest source for IT problems nowadays. We have a lot of tools, we have a lot of methods, we have almost anything we need to automate the technical part. And we have specialists who can do it properly. So this is no longer a principal problem. It is a problem still in doing it and doing it properly. That's fine, that's right. But it can be automated, and we have tools, you name it, countless. It's really countless how many possibilities you have to do a technical solution. And you have specialists for that. We also have already a lot of business modeling tools of every kind. But the difference is, to model knowledge, to model requirements, there is no automation. You have to do it manually. You have to get requirements out of people. What do you need for your work? And then translate it into some technical oriented way. So this will stay manual, at least for the near future, I think. The big problem is we have tools on both sides, in business, and we have tools in technique, but we do not have yet tools really crossing this border. And you may know these famous sayings. That's my short version of this border. They never program what we need. And the IT people, they never tell us exactly what they want. This is my short version of the gap between business and IT. And what we really need urgently is make it a green border which can be crossed. So make it possible that you can talk. The models can talk together, people can talk together, the systems can talk together. It doesn't have to be this one and the same thing, but at least make it easier to get to each other and understand each other. This is what all this is about, I'm talking about. Now, you may guess the answer I have to do this. It's again called information model. The description of your business knowledge. As I described, in a information model, we describe the common language, the collective reality of an environment of a company. That's huge. Once you understand each other in business and management and everywhere, that's a huge benefit, but it's not all. The information model is an exact model, and this relationship is based on the relational model from Cott, so it's an exact model, mathematically sound. So we use the same model containing business terms to map to our systems. We have a lot of systems. Every company has tens, 20, hundreds of systems sometimes. Big companies, several hundreds of systems. I've met one company that has 15 ERPs from 3 different vendors worldwide, and they should work together. So this is reality. You have different systems for different purposes with different databases, different data model, interchanging data in every direction to the outside, from the outside, and among each other. This reality of data management, you cannot get rid of. This is reality. But what we can do is we map these data models, system-specific, task-specific data models, with our general information model, with the knowledge model. This is what we do. And because they are both data models and the information model in a proper language, it's easy to do the mapping. So what we did, or what we propose, is the gap between the two can be closed by the common model, understandable by IT in a technical way, in a structural way, and by business in a content way. So we connect semantics, we connect knowledge to structure, then translated into a technical structure. That's what we're doing. You may have, or you may have heard about data governance, master data governance, whatever it is called. You have to manage the data exchange between systems. This is called data governance, attribute catalogs, whatever, column catalogs, you name it. This is in place in a lot of companies already, because you cannot handle 150 systems just by some Excel sheets. Well, some do it, but you shouldn't. So data governance is a topic which is well addressed already, not solved, but well addressed. We propose, we enlarge this to, so we call it information governance. Bring data governance together with the knowledge we described in the information model. And then you have an end-to-end governance. If a customer wants something new, you can go through all this governance and tell where will it end up, or where is it already stored in some database. Connect the two worlds. This is the goal of this common interface. Now, how do you do this? Of course, this doesn't come for free. I can tell you it's a lot of work to do an information model on business level. It takes a long time to gather this knowledge, to develop this kind of model. Again, we start small and enlarge it by and by. And very important, there can only be one information model for one enterprise. Common language cannot be described in several models. You have to bring it together in one model. So the information model must span projects and systems, as I already mentioned. So this will take time to build up, but you have to start somewhere. And the systems develop in the meantime, so the mapping has to be maintained as well. There's a lot of governance around, and this needs some concepts, this needs some methodology, some organizational change as well. That's why we call it governance. Now, wouldn't it be fine if we had a tool doing all this? Yes, it would. But reality again is we have a lot of tools out there already used or should be used to do all these jobs. We have tools for data governance, for attribute mapping, for attribute catalogs, and so on. We have good tools, that's fine. We have tools for information mapping. Yes, already here. You find them in the exhibition or in other talks. What tools are there? What is used out there? But there is, so far, I have not found the tool covering all of it. And sincerely, I do not believe it does exist, because there are so many aspects in this whole picture. I do not think that there will ever only be one tool covering all of it. So we have to live with several tools. We, as a consulting company, have faced another problem. Different companies use different tools already. If you have an enterprise architect in place and it is used and it is well used in a company, I'm not going to change this. This is good governance they already have. So what can we do to enlarge it, to use it for other purposes? And here our approach is, we have a concept of the model information, of our governance, of how we want to treat this information. It's not the tools telling us how we do it. We develop the concept of what do we need, on what stage, on what level, what do we need as information, how can we govern it, where is it stored, where we do get information from, how are changes handled. So you have to develop some governance around your common information, linking business to IT. And then you have to make sure that every tool you use, whatever it is, the output of these tools must fit in your concept. So you cannot use every tool to build a proper concept, but make sure whatever you use, it fits in your overall concept and you can bring information together from the different levels. And of course, once you do this, once you can bring information together, once you can link tools to each other, you can also present outcomes on the other side to every user who needs information, be it diagrams, be it web pages, wikis, or detailed descriptions, lists, mapping tables between systems and attributes, data models, XML structure, SQL structure, whatever it is. These are the outputs. This is what people need. And our idea is build up a model information environment which allows you to address every person in your company who needs some information out of this whole stack we have here. And as I said, there is not yet the one tool covering every level and everything to enough depth, but there are a lot of good tools out there which in combination can provide you this picture. And we already do this with companies. And the web page you see on top right is a prototype of of a tool we've written, collecting data information from several tools, putting it together into one website, publishing it for everybody in the company, down to data models. So from the information business, what is an area, down to in what table is it stored in our system. Once you have a concept in place, you can start inform people in a proper way. Okay. As I said before, this information model we have has to be read and used by everybody in the company. So we need not only one description, don't only need one diagram or one Excel list or one data model. We need several ways to communicate. How we did this, you see here on the right an information model describing the reality, the knowledge of a company. So we added some pictures from a web page or exploded view or catalog page and explain which term is where on the model. So again, give people a picture. They see their world on the left and they see the structured world with exactly the same names on the right. For IT people, maybe you don't need the drawing. They are happy with the information model because they can read models, but not everybody can or wants. Other examples we did, especially communication to business, a drawing of the concept we modeled. So what is a line between two telephone line? How is it organized? How is it in reality? So do some drawings. Again, on the left side, you have exactly the same names you have in the model. So explain the real world to a technical model, not technical, to a knowledge model, and the knowledge model you give to IT people to translate into data models. Next step, or another example, is a public transport plan, which is actually an information model, just another drawing. Easier, for some people it's easier to read. For me it's not, I'm a modeling man, but some people liked it with these areas, whatever you call it. The last example is very special. No, not the last, for last. You can add pictures explaining elements. So again, make it visual to layman, to non-IT people. But it's still, again, it's the same model. We have one technology or one method in the middle, the model, which defines everything exactly, but we add information for people who are not model affine. Okay, the last example is a huge one, a poster you put on the wall. You may say, yeah, this you cannot give to business people. They will never look at it. Truth is, this model was in the office of the CEO of a large company for a long time. He called it his information landscape or map of the company. And whenever somebody had a problem or talked about something, he went to this model, explain me where you are, what color is your department in, and what do you do, and what's the relationship to this and to purchase and to delivery and to HR. So even a model which you would say never talk data models with customers or with business people. I absolutely agree. Never talk data model or show data models to business people, but do show an information model to business people. They can read it, and depending on the level of technology or modeling techniques and so on, they can really work with it, or they need some additional explanation as I just shown you. So the old saying, never talk models with your customers or with your business people, is true for data models, but it's not true for this kind of model, information model. We really do it, and people in business love it, actually. However you present it, make sure your audience is addressed. This is the important part. Okay, brings me to the conclusion. The information model is technology and IT system agnostic documentation of your enterprise knowledge and your information need. That's all it is. It's a top-level enterprise matter. It has to span project and business divisions. How far you go depends on your needs. Where does it hurt currently? Start small, but think big. In the end, you have one information model for one enterprise. It will take time. And still you have 100 of data models. That's not a contradiction here. I call it, I think it's one of the missing links, probably not the missing link, but one of the missing links between business and IT. At least communication-wise, it links them together. Both sides can read an information model and understand it and use it. And I believe whatever you do, it's a first step and an absolute necessity for any digitization activity. Most people start with business processes. I think it's the wrong way to do it. You should always start with the basic entities and the relationship. This minimum context have to be set in an information model, and then you develop your business processes around it. A product and a customer and a delivery and a bill are the same, whatever process you're going to apply to it. So I think you should always start with an overview information model, any project you do for digitization of your company. Thanks a lot, and let's open the round for questions.
All right, we're doing great with time. That was right down to the minute. Thank you, Stefan. A couple of questions. The first question is on relationship labels from Christian Call. So Christian says, David Hay is adamant that relationships are not verbs, and therefore he uses is publisher of instead of publishers, for example. Are you aware of this viewpoint, and or
Yes.
have any opinions on it?
Yes, there was a paper around on this forum. I think relationships must be verbs. Mm-hmm. What does one entity have to do with another one? How is it related? And it's always a verb. A publisher does something with a book. He publishes. A book does something with a publisher, is published by, even if it's passive, it is some activity, and activity means it's a verb. I really do believe you have to use a verb, and I forbid in my training, I forbid to use any noun in this relationship, because a noun could be another entity, actually. So I really do believe you must use verbs. Even if it sounds a bit strange at the moment, try it out.
I would agree with you too. I think I also find that the verbs keep things very simple, because then what you're doing is you are creating sentences. You have nouns, which are the entities. You have the relationships, which are the verb, and you're telling a story. And I think that's really important. Actually, I also go back 1978. William Kent wrote Data and Reality, and he talks about the relationship being a business reason. And when you think about what that reason is, it really is a verb connecting to entities. So I would agree with you on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the other thing you will find out if you do it, it's not easy to find good verbs. Usually you know exactly, oh, publish a book, yes, has something to do. But if you ask for a proper verb describing it, people say, oh, yes, he does sometimes, and he has several, and it's really difficult part. And I think it's a way to understand. Once you can state it in a sentence, as you said, tell a story. A publisher publishes a book. This is a fact. This is normal language. And then you get everybody you need in your company to it. So you need, I definitely say, you need verbs.
Thank you. Thank you, Stefan. Another question from Marco Wabin. So how do you deal with terms which have different definitions in different contexts in the enterprise? Yeah.
Yes, that happens as well. A book in logistics is something heavy to carry around. A book in lecturing is content of the book. Yes, you have this. You have to find a new name. You cannot use the same name in a common communication. How we do it usually is find another term if there is one. If there is not, add appendix or something to it, call it a logistic book or a lecturing book. But you need to have one name for one definition valid in the whole company. Of course, within the department of logistic and transport, they will still call it book, but say, no, actually I'm referring to the physical book and not to the content. As you mentioned yesterday with cookies, how do you handle cookies? I think it's similar. Give it another name, allow synonyms in project or in department. But in the end, you need one common definition and one common name to share communication.
That's your mapping. Exactly. That is the mapping. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Stefan.
Welcome.
Great. Are there other questions? All right. Well, we are right on time. Stefan, thank you so much for a wonderful presentation.
Welcome.
Thanks, everyone, for the questions. We'll see you in the next session.
Yeah. Goodbye.